Hi, my name is Tej Singh, and I'm broadcasting from New Jersey on behalf of Stanford Online High School students from across the globe. So, hello world. With us here today is Mr. Richard Shaw, the Dean of Admissions and Financial Aid at Stanford University. Thank you so much for being on our show.
Thank you for having me.
So, just to start off, what does a typical day look like for an admissions officer during this time of year when the applications haven't started coming in yet?
Well, we just welcomed the new class of 2020, and Stanford starts a little bit later. So we're just heading out now to reach out to prospective students. The class of 2021 it is about to apply to the university, and so we have admissions officers fanning out across the nation and across the world. This is typical of universities and colleges this time of year. We haven't started the review process. We're really, at this point, talking to prospective students, trying to share information about the college admissions process as well as respectively, about Stanford. So we're busy traveling, busy preparing, busy training. It's a full-time job.
And so, speaking of the new incoming class, they're obviously a special group of kids, and it must be really hard to choose a pool of selected kids from a enormous number of applicants. What sets apart the admitted candidates apart from the others? Is there something in particular that just comes to mind?
Well, this is a process that is national and international. This is a rite of passage. Young people are applying to many schools across the world, across the nation, and everybody wants to know the question you just asked. What is the secret as it relates to the characteristics of young people getting into any particular institution? And certainly, if it's highly selective, everybody wants to know the answer. And actually, there's no specific answer to the question. It really is, we try to look at every young person in terms of their context, in terms of their own life story, in terms of the record that they've put together as they apply to universities and colleges, and Stanford specifically. We're looking for, I suppose, what one would call a good match. Because a lot of students that apply to this institution and schools like it are very well qualified on quantitative measures. They have, reasonably strong test scores. They're in the top of their class. These are all realities of being in a selective environment. So we really have the opportunity to go well beyond that, to do a deep dive into the soul and the nature and the reality of the young person that's applying to us. So we spend a lot of time in the application itself, and we're looking at those essays. You may ask me about that later. We're looking at the recommendations and the support that those students get from their teachers. We're looking for your passion for the intellectual sort of process, as well as looking at what you've sort of done as you've been a high school student or gone all the way through school. So there's no secret formula, and there's no absolute slam dunk answer to the question, because we really have such a broad and deep diversity of students and so many different perspectives. The goal is to try to make a good match with the institution and try to bring people together that really care about what we have to offer. And that's true for any school or college in the country. We're all trying to make a good match. So I'm sorry, I can't tell you what the secret formula is. It's one of the most commonly asked questions in the world.
Yeah, it's fine. This isn't the only interview with Secret. Our last interview was with Brent Hasty of Coca-Cola, and they talked about the secret vault in which they have the formula. So, but for the Coca-Cola. But speaking of going beyond the quantitative stuff, you're talking about the subjective. An important part of that is the essay. What about a essay makes it stand apart? Is it the way it's written or the way it's delivered? Is there something that comes to mind about how it should be formatted, or?
I don't think there's any, we give no advice actually, as it really, although there are hundreds of books written about how you write the the great essay. The truth of the matter is what we're trying to get through those essays is a reflection of who you are. And if one tries to craft it in such a way as to be a Pulitzer Prize winning short essay that might even be a little bit out of sync with who we think you are in the other parts of the file, then that may not play well. The truth of the matter is we want students, prospective students, to be transparent, to be honest with themselves, to not engage in 50 different people editing their essay. We want them to sit down and reflect on who they are and think about the questions, give some real thought to the questions without everybody trying to turning to others to try to see if in fact the way you've written an essay meets their expectations. The fact of the matter is you are communicating with us. And so we want you to talk about things that matter to you. And the questions are formulated in a way to try to get at that. So everybody's always trying to figure out, well, what is it exactly that admissions officer wants? And the truth of the matter is, we want you to be yourself. We want you to take some time to be bold enough to be able to talk about what matters to you, and or what you're interested in, or what your passions are, and to do that with a level of honesty, to really reflect for a while about really what the sorts of things that you care about. But there's no formula. Obviously, writing a full sentence is pretty good, or spelling correctly is pretty good. So being careful with the way you put together the information that you're sharing with us is helpful, because guess what? We have to read it. And so to the extent that it's readable and really a reflection of who you are and engages us as a reader, then I think that you've gone a long way. But be yourself. Don't let other people manage this process, because in fact there's a billion-dollar industry that's trying to do that.
Exactly. And speaking of reading, or you guys reading it, preparing for this interview, reading about how some universities, or a lot of them, hire temporary application or essay readers. So how big of a challenge is it for universities to maintain objectivity, especially in the first read when only one person might be looking at an application and it'd be someone a temporary, not someone who's been working full time?
Right. Yeah, that's a good question. And it's, sometimes when you look at the volume, it just seems completely daunting. It is fairly daunting. But we really believe that every young person should have the opportunity and the respect to be considered if they've gone the distance in terms of applying to the university. We want to be open and transparent about the possibilities, but we want to walk away from all these quantitative measures that scare everybody half to death. I think the truth is, yes, we have many professional officers, about 26 officers in our operation, and we do hire in other schools on an annual basis people that are reading that in many cases the vast majority of our what we call seasonal readers have read for years. They've been reading applications, and the key to all this is the training. The key is to ensure that that everybody really has a good sense of where we're trying to get. I, as the dean, will set the tenor and the objectives that we're trying to accomplish. Talk about impartiality. Talk about reading students in the context of their own life experience. These things are all important. And then in any case where you're evaluating a lot of different individuals, you try to also engage in a process called norming. You try to norm your reading so that in fact there aren't these wild card biased opinions finding their way into the application process, because in our case, and in the case of my colleagues around the country, we want to be open and accessible to all students, and we don't want to come in with any preconceived judgments about who is right and who is wrong. And that's why the breadth and depth and diversity of our incoming classes is quite stunning. And often everybody thinks it's maybe one type of kid, but in fact, it really is a reflection of the world in which we live.
And that's one thing we're talking about with Mr. Whitney, Caltech's executive director, that it's the one type of class, basically a diverse class, and you have different kids that comprise that one class. I guess that's
Right. And diversity is very broadly defined. It could be first generation to college, it could be fifth generation to college, it could be people that come from many different cultural perspectives, from different religious perspectives, and race and ethnic backgrounds, from low income all the way through high income. It doesn't. We don't come in with any preconceived notions. We want to be attractive. We want to attract young people from all walks of life who have the energy and the desire to pursue their higher education. And we want to be part of the membership of this country, which is stunning, and give them different kinds of choices in terms of where they apply to college and the places they consider. So at the end of the day, the class, if you were to in many of our cases, were to meet the incoming class, you'd just be stunned by the fact that it is very hard to typecast.
And you were talking earlier because on your website it talks about the importance of intellectual vitality. That's one of the factors you use to judge students. So for the benefit of the audience, can you elaborate by giving a few examples of just what it means to have or demonstrate intellectual vitality?
It's a lot of fun because it's becoming cliche, isn't it? That is the term intellectual vitality. It's used so often that nobody knows what it means. But the fact of the matter is it does have meaning. It really is talking about passion for what you do, deep diving into places things that you're interested in, an ability to express that interest and that passion for for whatever it is that you care about. Part of what we're trying to accomplish in looking for intellectual vitality is the fact that you just didn't go through the process. You didn't just continually ask the question, now how do I get an A exactly? But in fact, you as a high school student you found your passion, you found your place into intellectual and academic worlds that sort of drove you to move to the next step, which is to want more, to learn more, to engage more. And all kids are not the same. And this idea of being broadly educated, intensely broadly educated, probably is important. It is important to have some breadth in your education, but it's also important to begin to try to identify the things you really care about. So you might love English literature, or you might like astrophysics or neurobiology, or you might like engineering, but you tend to gravitate towards courses that also feed into your passion. So the reality is we want to hear from kids about what it is that turns them on. And that can also be, to some extent, even things you do outside the classroom, the things you pursue with high levels of interest. That could reflect certainly the use of your intellect and the vitality that goes with it. So obviously one of the most important parts of this is how you express that, how you talk about that when you write to us, and then how others might perceive you. That is, those that write recommendations in your behalf. So it's cliche, but it's something that we care about, and when we see it, we know it.
And speaking of writing to you guys, this is the season where so many different seniors are deciding whether they should apply based on what schools are restrictive early action,
Sure.
early decision. Sure. So what considerations does a university like Stanford have in making the decision to whether offer restrictive early action or early decision for the first pool of applicants?
Right. It's an important question, and my opinion about early programs is where you apply early should be where you want to go. I think, in other words, the early program is a place where you've done your homework, you've looked across the nation, you've looked at the different possibilities, you've studied the web, you've looked at college websites, you've done this, and you've decided that these places or the individual places or places you're interested in, and there may be in that group one that elevates to the top. That is, you already knew that. You knew it 3 years ago. You still know it. That's been validated in your mind. So if you apply to a place early decision, you're locked in. That's a lock-in. That says if you get into that university or college, you must go. That's a commitment. And there are a lot of ED schools. If it's early action and open, you can apply to a few of those, and that's fine too. That may mean that you're not too sure. In our case, we do something called restricted early action, and we say to you, if you apply to Stanford early, you can't apply to another like institution, another private institution. You can't apply to the publics. But if you're applying early, generally we assume that that's because you've decided that we're the university that if you got in, you'd probably want to go to. But we don't restrict it. We don't say you can't apply later. And students may have a change of heart. You're only 17, right? Or 16 or 17. You may have a change of heart, and some students can go on from our system, even if they get in and apply to other places January 1st. I don't want it to be assumed that applying to, you actually have to do your homework, because applying to Stanford early doesn't give you an edge. It doesn't give you, if we take you early, we're going to take you later. So in other words, we really are pretty consistent about the students that we take, even though the odds are, if you look at the percentages, we hire a little bit, we admit a little bit higher percentage, but it's because they're really strong. And we're going to, if we take them now or take them later, it just means that we've given it full evaluation. We don't do it because you are committed to coming here. That's not the reason for it.
So, but for example, for Stanford, is there something that you think of, administrators as a whole when deciding whether Stanford should offer REA, or whether next year, for example, you should switch to just ED, or are there things that?
I've been in this business a long time in 5 universities. I can guarantee you, I've been through this discussion for many, many years. And in fact, I've never been adverse to the early programs. It's not a matter of, and I think for students that have really done their homework, it's not a bad idea for them to, and they have a first choice, and they've looked at all of the criteria and the profile, that they take their shot. That's fine. But we all also, these early programs have gotten a bad rep for the issue around diversity applying early. But that's changed a lot in recent years. So I've always been a proponent of it. I really am not interested in the programs that lock you in, because I worry about that, because that means that so early decision for many is, if that's your first choice and that's what you want to do, that's a great idea. I would not do that. I want to give you an opportunity to change your mind if you want to and apply somewhere else early. But we don't want to flood the marketplace early. So that's why there are restrictions about it, whether it's ED or REA. These restrictions have to do with not flooding the market with 10 applications on November 1st, because that means that students could be locking up, if they're really strong, 7 admits, and that means 6 people get displaced. You understand?
Yeah. So, pulling from your experience, is there a simple, or concise message or advice you have for the current seniors, whether it be about applying to college or just in general how to live life, or what you've learned even when entering the workforce?
Yeah, I actually think my advice would take us back before technology. I think you kids are so overwhelmed with the amount of information coming in on you, and the pressures you feel and the stress you feel in high school, and worrying about what you didn't do and what you should do. I would like to take you back to a time where you ought to seek a healthy life balance, and that in fact, even in the case of kids loading up with 15 APs, if you ask me, I think that's a little bit crazy. I think we've done studies that would suggest that if you take, even if you take 6 APs, there's no difference in the prediction of your ability to do the work at a respective institution. So we want you to chill out a little bit. That is, enjoy your high school experience, because the more you find joy or enjoyment in the high school experience, the more likely you come through to us as being somebody, because you're sort of comfortable with yourself. That we'd be more likely to say, gosh, that would be a great fit with us, because we want you to have lots of choice and lots of opportunity. But what I find is that, at least for some cohorts, not all, they're under so much pressure that they're ready to explode just about the time they get to college. And then they're first generation kids or low income kids who have no opportunity, and they have to maybe work part-time, and that's all good. So the fact of the matter is, there is no formula about getting in. It's really, we're trying to get to know you. You, not your consultant, not your high school counselor, not your English teacher. We're trying to get you to get to know you as the individual that we're trying to make a match with. And the fact of the matter is, we hope that in fact what we gain from you is the sense that you enjoy life, that you're enjoying your high school experience, and you're ready to take that joy on to the next step.
And speaking of, saying kids are so stressed, more and more kids are taking a gap year, so I guess it goes to show that that's being another popular option.
Right. I'm a very strong gap year proponent. And I think for a lot of students, given that they've pushed themselves so hard through, if they have the ability to do this, to the 12th grade, it might be a good time to take a year off and do something very different, and go and do something special, do service work in other parts of the world or in the country, to do something that's different than perhaps the 9 to 5, or actually the 9 to 9 routine that you went through in high school. And for some students, that works very well. And what we find is when they come back from that, their perspective changes, their maturity increases, and their sort of the calm that brings with them as they begin to engage the university or college life is quite strong. It actually reflects that they're ready, and so they're coming with sort of enhanced perspective, even in the freshman seminars or whatever they're engaging in. And we find that to be quite beneficial. It's not for everybody. Sometimes it's impossible to do that. Sometimes you don't have the resources to do it. But if you make the choice to do it, we're not, and that's one of our options, is to say, many of our colleges and my colleagues, one option is to say, I'm not going to come this year, I'll come next.
And in that case, I think Katie Ledecky, she took a couple, I guess, to be in the
No,
Olympics.
she had a reason to do that.
But she's a special case, of course. One of the greatest swimmers, in her age group.
Yeah. I mean, she's a great example of someone she had a purpose, and I think that's important. If you take a gap year, find a purpose. That's a great example, because she obviously had a purpose. She wanted to do something quite extraordinary. She managed to do that, but she arrived the other day, and here she is, and she's moved in, and now she probably has quite interesting. I don't think she brought her 5 medals with her, but I think she'll have interesting perspective, and she'll start swimming for our swim team. We ought to be fairly good this year.
Hopefully so with her. How could you not be? And so you're talking about what to do in the gap year. A lot of students, just in general, are, because of the way the world is shaped, that it's becoming easier and easier to have tech startups, because everything can be done through the cloud. And so, what is Stanford's opinion of people, students doing these bigger projects and having less time to have more extracurriculars?
Well, I think that's okay. Again, this has to do with intellectual vitality and passion. If you're creating something, you're creating it for the pure joy of it, not for the fact that you're already at 17 wanting to be a .com billionaire. That's really not what your intention should be. But if you love to code, if you love to create, if that's your passion, you have an opportunity to do that. That we don't discount you from doing that, but we also don't advantage you because you did that. A lot of people have perceptions about who we are. We're stunning in the humanities, right? We're a liberal arts institution that has extraordinary breadth across the curriculum, and we're not looking for any type of kid. And we're not actually in the gap year, you do what matters to you, but you've already been admitted, because you apply, you get in. If you choose to take a gap year, you make that decision. We say, that's cool, and we'll see you next fall. But the only advantage of that is that you maybe have developed a skill you really like, and you'll arrive with skills that will maybe set you off as more advanced in a particular area that you've engaged in.
So moving on to the shorter questions, what's your favorite thing to do in your free time?
Well, I think being with my family is one of my favorite things, and travel. Love to travel. I try to stay as young as I conceivably can. I know you're not seeing a young guy here, but so I like to run. I love to read. I like to take it all in. I think the world is an amazing place. I read about a dozen different publications every day. or pieces of them. So I try to stay well informed. And I kind of like that because I was a history major in college. So I still do what I loved then. I do it now. But I try to find those moments where I can enjoy my family, because and that's what we all should do. We should try to enjoy those people that have raised us or that we've raised and we care about, and then enjoy the things that come from that.
So two things from that. Is there any place that still is on your bucket list that you like to travel to? And then also, what are some of your favorite magazines or websites to browse?
Yeah, well, the second question is The Economist, because it's one of the most comprehensive reflections that hopefully gives at least somewhat unbiased information. And I think, I've been blessed because I do this kind of work. I've been all over the world. So, but I still have not been to Australia, and I have not been to South Africa. These are places I'd like to go someday. I've been almost everywhere else. So, but I love the world. I love the breadth and depth, and there's nothing more exciting than to go into a particular culture and immerse into that culture and learn about their perspective, because it augments one's sense of all the possibilities there are in the world in which we live.
So, is there something, our next question, that you wish was taught in schools today, that students will learn that they aren't learning currently?
Well, I guess if I were to, this will be really odd, but I actually, you're moving so fast. Students are moving so fast, and there's so much information coming in that I would like them to relearn how to read, and how to sit down with a good book or a 500-page book, and actually not engage only in sound bites and in all of this software that gives you only so many characters that you can see, or pictures that disappear. Or I think what I've been sort of saddened by in watching how kids are developing is you only read because you're doing something for a class. I think the reality is I'd like to see students return to reading, return to the novel, return to the writers over history, and spend more time more slowly, trying to get a sense of stunning reflections that you find through the great writers in the world.
And a lot of that software that's making everything so accessible, whether it be Snapchat you were referring to, made by Evan Spiegel, or Google, which is making it easier to just find searches rather than read the entire page, was made at Stanford. So it's pretty interesting how you're great at humanities, what you talk about, but also you're at the forefront of technology field also.
Well, I think there's a balance. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, and we've lost some sight of the balance. It's a little bit like your question about engaging in a tech company. I mean, well, how about just volunteering in your local community center and helping kids that are disadvantaged? That's as valuable to me as the other. But I think we need to chill out a little bit. We need to slow down a little bit, because it gives you time to reflect. And there's nothing better than reflection after you read an incredible book. It gives, your mind goes wild, and because you use your imagination, and that someday may contribute to your innovation.
And speaking of today's kids, they might be reading books how to get into college.
Yeah, how help us. Oh boy, right. Tell them to burn the book. That's the book to burn. Those are nonsense. Just be yourself.
Or reading them on the Kindle, there's nothing to burn in that case.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Well, you can delete that real fast.
Now we're on to our this or that segment. Would you rather have one wish granted today or three in 10 years?
I always like to think ahead. So I'd like to see. I would like to plan for the future. Maybe 5, maybe 7 years, but and it doesn't matter as long as those things make a difference. So if it's one stunning thing tomorrow, or it's 3 pretty good things in 10 years, either way, I'd be pretty happy.
Would you rather win an Olympic medal or an Academy Award?
Oh boy, that's a hard question. They're both stunning. I think I would love to to be really good in the theater and win a Tony or an Academy Award for a incredible performance. But I could play an Olympian in a movie, and then I win both ways.
If you could trade lives with anyone living today for just a day, who would it be?
Oh boy, that's the hardest question. That's a very hard question. Socrates. Oh, living today. Living. They have to live today.
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't know. That's a hard question. Let me.
Well, the last question is pretty hard too.
Okay, well, this one is. I would like to be Barack Obama for a day. I think he's a pretty cool guy.
Okay. Juice or soup?
I love onion soup, so I'll go soup.
And our last question. Wait for it. Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Princeton or Harvard?
Oh, brother, neither. How's that?
Sounds good. So,
all right.
we'd like to thank Mr. Shaw for graciously sparing his time and coming here onto our show, Pixel Talk, and inspiring hopefully not only the Stanford Online High School community, but youth around the country and perhaps even around the globe. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Great to talk to you.